If you've heard me talk about the claims that MADiSON is the scientifically scariest game ever made, well, then you'll know that I had my doubts. We've been playing VR for 3/4 of a decade, and a lot of us kicked off that decade by playing Resident Evil 7, one of the scariest games of recent memory. And then we followed it up with Paranormal Activity, Don't Knock Twice, Propagation Paradise Hotel. I mean, what can MADiSON VR possibly throw at me that I haven't already seen? The answer is, like, everything.
Answer me that. Just answer me that!
MADiSON kicks off in a dark room, harshly lit by a staticky TV, with the shadow of your father standing just outside the room, projected on the ground, pounding on the door loudly as if he's trying to get in, screaming, "You're not my son." This is some powerful PTSD-fueled imagery that they're throwing at you in literally the opening minute of the game, as you learn to grab items and access your inventory. Yeah, you heard that right. Even MADiSON's tutorial is the stuff of nightmares. And when I say it only gets more intense from this point on, I mean it. Lights flicker, often leaving you in complete darkness. Objects around you will disappear and reappear just as soon as your head is turned. And in the world of MADiSON, monsters are very, very real. And of course, now you're asking, is it scarier than Resident Evil 7? And all I can say is this. I keep finding myself having the same conversations from 7 years ago, about having to take my headset off to breathe and remind myself, Brian, it's just a game. Playing through segments, staring at the ground, or even worse, with my eyes shut because I'm just terrified of what might happen. Being scared that I could have a literal, real-life heart attack because the game is just that relentless. It took me around 7 or 8 hours to figure out all the puzzles and play from start to finish, but I didn't even find half of the collectible red photographs that were scattered around. And if you know me, you know that I love collectibles in any games, but it was hard to care about them on my first playthrough, because I was always far more concerned about what was around the next corner, and only backtracked when it was absolutely necessary.
My birthday present? How did it get here?
Your only real defense in MADiSON is the camera that was gifted to you today on your 16th birthday. It's an instant camera with luckily unlimited film, and you will want to take as many pictures as possible. Mainly because simply photographing something is often the solution to a puzzle or what unlocks the next door, but also because you don't have a flashlight or a gun, so taking pictures down dark hallways is the only way to see what's down there, which is terrifying. And if you're being attacked, the flash from the camera is the only thing that will keep the monsters at bay. But I realize by saying that it makes MADiSON sound a lot more action-heavy than it really is. In fact, if you strip away the horror aspect completely, you're essentially left with a puzzle game that feels like one giant escape room. You'll become intimately familiar with Luca's family home as you trek back and forth, slowly unlocking more and more rooms and ending up in places that simply shouldn't exist. The puzzles all mostly make sense in a weird, paranormal, alternate reality way. But my advice is to simply remember that not all the puzzles can be solved when you first encounter them. If you know half of a safe combination, you will learn the other half, eventually. And when in doubt, just take a picture.
What?
The flat screen version of MADiSON has been out for almost 2 years now, so everything I've said so far has probably been said 1,000 times before. So let's address what's new, the VR implementation, which is simply phenomenal. MADiSON VR was recently delayed to utilize dynamic foveated rendering, allowing developers to use eye tracking to get the frame rate from 60 reprojected to a native 90 frames. And that's apparent from the word go. I'm so appreciative of this delay because this is what PSVR2 games should look like. Silky smooth frame rates, awesome lighting, smooth turning that's actually smooth. And yeah, there's some shimmering in the environments, but it's never a distraction. And when so much of MADiSON looks practically photorealistic, it's a small price that I'm more than willing to pay. Even the mirror, which is present in so many darker horror games, was nowhere to be found, well, other than when the red emergency lights kick on. But again, it's such a minor complaint. Now, as impressive as the visuals are, when you pair them with the excellent sound design, well, you've got something really special. The noise is coming from other rooms, doors closing, furniture moving. It's all just to keep you on your toes, but the ambient soundtrack really takes it to the next level. I mean, listen to this. I mean, yeah, it's dark and creepy, but it also completely envelops you in a way that almost feels oppressive. This is part of MADiSON's appeal. There's a million scary moments, but between those moments, it never lets you relax.
God, I need to get out of this fucking house.
And overall, the controls are pretty good too. There are plenty of moments where you'll just reach out and pull the trigger in order to get Luca to investigate or interact with something, which might remind you that MADiSON was originally a flat screen game. But if you didn't know that, the VRAF stuff here might just convince you that it never was. You'll open drawers and doors and turn keys manually. That's the kind of stuff you take for granted. But when you take out your hammer and start pounding on 2x4s to break them, it feels real. The haptics in MADiSON are great, and pairing them with booming sound effects really bring the world to life. Now, everything's not perfect. Sometimes picking up items isn't as simple as it should be, and occasionally dealing with your inventory can be a little bit finicky, especially during one or two instances where puzzle solving requires you to actually put things back in your inventory just to pull them back out again to place them down. But I do think MADiSON makes up for these minor faults with the awesome VRAF camera controls. Using the grip button, you'll pull the camera out from your backpack and then pull the trigger to take a photo. And then with your other hand, you'll take the photograph and shake it to develop it like you would a Polaroid. It might sound like a minor thing, but considering how frequently you'll be using the camera in MADiSON, I'm really happy that the whole experience is just as intuitive as you'd hope.
Blue knees?
As a final note before wrapping up this review, I have to say that I've been disappointed with storytelling in VR recently. You're either just staring at people talking at you or listening to some floating robot voice talk incessantly. But MADiSON manages to tell a great story and never feels like it's force-feeding it to you. Sure, sometimes you'll be listening to audio tapes or phone messages and just standing around waiting for the voices to end. But you'll also find journals scattered around. There's tons of environmental storytelling, and Luca himself occasionally speaks up, talking about his feelings or concerns. Now, normally I'd hate this because I want to be the character I'm playing as, but with Luca, it feels different. Yes, I'm controlling him through the course of the adventure, but somehow he still feels like a different character, someone I'm constantly empathizing with and wanting to make sure that he survives and ultimately finds safety. It's a tough story to get through because, like the horror that it's infused with, it starts dark and only gets darker. It's been 2 days since I completed MADiSON, and I still can't stop thinking about it. The story was great, the environments and sound design were incredible, and the fact that, in my head, it's competing with the other scariest VR game ever made is just, it's shocking. So far, I've only played through the normal difficulty, and didn't even come close to getting all the collectibles. So hopefully in a few days I can build up my courage and play it on hard, and maybe even one day go for the platinum. Maybe. But in the meantime, I'll remember my first playthrough for raising the bar for puzzle games, horror games, and the quality we should all expect from VR in general.